What's going on, YouTube? So the other day I saw a post from Digital Foundry, one of those community post things that everyone does now, asking what PS3 game should get an Assassin's Creed Black Flag style remaster, and I had some thoughts about that. So firstly, I like Digital Foundry. In fact, they're one of my most watched YouTube channels. I especially like John Linneman's commentary. He's a super hardcore, consumer rights and game preservation advocate, and all the other guys there are super cool. At least, from my perspective, watching their stuff. I don't know if they're nice in real life. They probably are. And by the way, I do hope Alex's back injury is, recovering and that's going well. So just, I wanted to say that so you watching this know that I'm saying all this from a place of respectful disagreement. So in what way am I disagreeing with this post? Well, it's really the framing of it. I'm not against remasters and remakes. In fact, sometimes I think they're a good thing. I really like the Last of Us Part 1 remake, and that one got a lot of heat for being unnecessary, but I actually thought it was worth the price, just as an example. So I'm not against them. However, right now I think there should be fewer of those, and more of a focus on new original games. I think gaming is way oversaturated with remasters and remakes and all other kinds of re's. Like, I can't point to a single individual one and say, like, oh, fuck that thing, that shouldn't have happened. You know, like, we look at the AC Black Flag remake, and a lot of people are liking it. I think just by virtue of gamers being made happy playing it, it's not a bad thing, right? I don't want to just say, just complain for the sake of complaining when it's something that's making people happy, right? Clearly it's doing something good if people are playing it and enjoying it. And I would be a hypocrite, too, to point at some and say, oh, these are good because I like them, and point at others and say, nah, fuck that, they're stupid, and you're stupid if you play it. I'm not about that vibe. I want to contribute positive energy, not negative energy here, so I'm not trying to do that. So when I say I disagree with the framing of the post, what I mean is that we shouldn't be asking the industry for more endless remakes and remasters being sold, for either full price or close to full price, when it is obviously a much lower effort project for the publisher. And that is kind of definitionally giving the players less value for the same price as the original game. I feel like the saturation of so many remasters and remakes is kind of cheapening gaming. I think these projects are being turned into crutches for studios. How often do we hear this kind of analysis coming from like some gaming insiders and gaming journalists? They'll say something like this. Well, I think Studio X is making this remaster to help fund their original, game project that'll be coming out in a couple years. So if we buy this full-priced remake of their old game, it helps them keep the lights on while they work on their new game that isn't a remake, which won't be out for a couple years, and they gotta pay their employees that whole time. For this reason, I understand why, Studio X needs to do this remake project in order to pay their employees in between bigger releases. So I don't want to, name names, but I've heard this many times in recent history from some kind of big gaming YouTubers, and I'm kind of shocked to hear this being said, unironically. There are some major issues with that sentiment. So, firstly, we, the customers, I want to say this, real clear, because it's easy to get sucked into kind of a trap here. We, the customers, are not responsible for some other company's balance sheet or cash flow issues. You, the customer, should never pay for a product out of some kind of charity logic. These companies are not 501c3 or whatever tax exempt, charitable organizations doing some kind of goodwill work for humanity and only just covering operational costs. And no, these are for-profit businesses. Even the cool, smaller studios that have a style and personality on their teams, they are businesses, not charities. So my advice is this. You don't have to listen to me. I'm just some asshole, but here's my advice. Never give to them out of kindness. Don't give them money out of kindness. The same way you shouldn't pay any more in taxes as an individual than what you're obligated to, you shouldn't pay more to a private business as a customer than you have to. If there's a discount or coupon available, don't feel bad what if they're making less money? No, use it. If the latest product is lower quality than what you determine the price tag of it demands, wait for a sale, or just skip it. These are not charities to be supported by donations. Secondly, it is the responsibility of the developer to manage their business finances, not us. If they're putting out remasters not to legitimately bring value to the customers, but to just add a higher margin product and boost their cash flows, and we know that's what the product is for, then we should not support it. It is, again, I use this word a lot lately, definitionally, giving less value to the customer for that price if that is the stated, or maybe not stated, but the known goal of the remaster/remake product. This behavior is low-key, as the kids say, low-key, kind of manipulative. To us, fans of the games, it should not be encouraged. My main point here is that we, the customers, gamers, should remember that if we let companies extract more money from us at a lower cost to them, they will do it. And it'll be better for them and worse for us. I think that what is happening with this level of oversaturation of remasters and remakes, this is what's happening. I mean, the big game the last couple weeks has been Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. And then what's the next big game release that's going to be all the talk for the next couple weeks? It's the Halo Campaign Remake, Campaign Evolved, which is $50 US. Alright, a little cheaper, but still consider this. It's a 2001 game with a shiny new coat of paint, with some other elements of later Bungie Halo games added in. And it has a few new missions, but from what I've heard, they're pretty short and not as good as the original campaign missions, and there's no multiplayer. So even though there's a little bit of new stuff, it overall has less content than the original game. And, why are we accepting that? It has less content than the 2001 game. They really couldn't put multiplayer in there? Again, this is just obviously 343 Halo Studios putting out, the bare minimum. The bare minimum would be it included a multiplayer mode, so less than what we should consider the bare minimum, and $50 for it. You can get the Master Chief Collection for probably less than $10 on a pretty common sale, and get 6 original Halo campaigns that are just ported onto PC, or Xbox, right? Why would you get this single campaign for that price? Well, without getting too much into the individual product. That's just an example of, 2 kind of big game releases in a row are both just remakes of older games. I think there's just too much of this. I'd rather there be an original game with a new story out now, Going back to the post, in the case of PS3 games, because that's what Digital Foundry mentioned there, and older console games in general, that are kind of a hostage of the older console. What I would like to see, ideally, is more digital ports of those that are just the original code with minimal changes made to make it work. Again, the Master Chief Collection, I know the multiplayer was broken on that thing, but the campaigns just worked pretty well. And they, you playing Halo Reach on PC, it just feels like the Xbox 360 game, but with unlocked frames and pixels, and I think that's the best way to go. Run it on your console, on an emulator, but it is running on the console. And you know, it'd also be cool, what if you take a PS3 game and you stick the disc into your PS5 and it actually installs the game and runs it, like an Xbox 360 game on the Series X. Yeah, that would be cool. And add it to the store. You can buy it digitally. Sony would still make money. It would still be for sale. You know, they could charge $15 or $20 for a, you know, PS2 game from 2004 or something. They still make money. If they set their minds to, I know there's been talk of like, oh, it's hard to emulate. Okay, it's hard. Do it. You had like you're a giant company with software and hardware engineers that are very well paid. Make it happen. Like, just excuses, you know? They're not doing it because it's impossible. They're doing it because they'd rather have you buy a $70 remake of Silent Hill 2 than be able to take an old Silent Hill 2 PS2 disc and put it in your console. That's why they're not doing it. Again, it makes them more money. It doesn't give us more value necessarily. So, I know shiny new graphics are alluring. Sometimes I will pay just for shiny graphics, you know. Again, sometimes I do like a remaster or remake more than the original. Sometimes I think it's worth it. Sometimes I think it is a good deal. Those $10 upgrades, I think often are a pretty good deal that Sony would do. But the industry is just leaning way too heavily on these. And there are fewer original games being made now by a lot of these developers as a result of this trend. And real quick, to address another concern, sometimes people say, well, it costs so much more now to make games, and because of that, they need to fund the projects, they need to fund their original games by making these remasters in between. And this kind of circles back to what we were talking about earlier, actually. Like, if the remake of an old game is to fund, I'm saying this with air quotes, fund their next game, then I think when I buy the remake of the old game, I should get a code for the new game. If this remake is funding their new project, then why do I still need to pay full price when their next original game comes out? Where's that money going if the remake is supposed to be funding it? You see the logic here? Remember, look out for your own financial interests. Look out for your own wallet. The business world is a world of dogs. It's not a charity. And I know, like, we want developers and creative people to be treated well, but these are businesses we're dealing with. They're not going to treat their developers better because you give them more money voluntarily when they're not giving you more value back. However nice the PR is of a company, it's a business. They're looking for their bottom line. And they don't care about you. They don't know you exist. And without getting too deep back into that, my main response to that point about the cost of games is this, like, to the developers, just don't spend so much developing games. Like, it's actually possible for a AAA studio to make a game today with the budget of a 7th gen game, adjusted for inflation, you know, for employee wages and stuff. Ubisoft can actually make their next game with the size and scope of Assassin's Creed 2 instead of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's totally possible. I think people would like that. I think they'd say, hey, you know, I kind of like this game having some rough edges and having a cool story be, you know, prioritized over having, you know, granular details in every single blade of grass in a, you know, 60 square mile open world, right? It's doable. This idea of like, well, every new game has to cost $300 million to produce now. No, they don't. That's a choice. So, anyways, you know, if I made this video a few months ago, I would probably say, hey, maybe the PS6 will have more backwards compatibility, and you can just stick a PS3 disc in there. But considering that Sony is currently in a holy war against physical media, by the way, fuck them for that. Don't forget that. I doubt the PS6 will have that kind of back compatibility. But regardless, you know, if you want to play older games, forget the remasters. I mean, again, sometimes they're good. I'm not saying as a concept they all suck. I'm not saying that. I play them sometimes, but don't be afraid, get an old console if you don't have one laying around and play the OG games. Like, I've been playing MotorStorm on an old used PS3, and I can tell you that when I play it, I'm not thinking like, this would look great on a remaster. No, it's just good as is. I play it and it looks good. It's fun. Um, and I'm playing it, by the way, on my modern OLED TV. Um, just directly from the old dusty PS3. No remaster needed, and no CRT needed either. Some people lately have been saying like, well, retro gaming's fun, but you need a CRT tube TV. No. Am I the only one who remembers all the downsides, those big thick black lines between every pixel? Like, I don't know. There's this whole thing of like, CRTs were amazing, LCD was the worst thing. I remember when I first got an LCD, and it was a piece of junk. It was like the worst LCD screen ever made, and it looked 1,000 times better than my tube TV. But that's a whole different discussion. That's just a side tangent, irrelevant. I'll talk about that more sometime. Anyways, those were my thoughts for today. What do you think of all these remasters? Do you play retro games on emulators or old consoles still? Let me know what you think. Till next time, happy gaming.